I do think one of the things I think will be interesting about Texas and the schools, if you have a transfer quarterback that people know coming in, that probably helps you, or if you have a quarterback coming in back that people know, Quinn Ewers coming back is going to help Texas in massive ways. I mean, the schools we're talking about, USC, Ohio State. Look, Michigan doesn't really know what their quarterback situation is going to be next year because there's some thought that J.J. McCarthy can leave. I'm leaning towards the fact that I think he's coming back. But
you see if they win the Natty and he has a big performance and he might get some advice. But, yeah, I'd lean that way as well.
Yeah, but Quinn Ewers looks like he's coming back, and that's going to set up Texas.
Oh, I'm talking about McCarthy.
Yeah, but McCarthy, but Quinn Ewers looks like he's coming back. That's going to set them up really well. If McCarthy comes back to Michigan, that's going to set them up really well because, of the teams in the championship in the college football playoff, the only one with a new quarterback this year was Alabama. That was it. 3 of the other 4 teams all had returning quarterbacks. All had guys who were built in the system. So I think it's interesting to note that having a guy coming back for another year gives you a leg up on people that maybe, especially now, is more pronounced because you can have a guy for a year and then he can be gone.
Yeah, I mean, Texas in particular, they decided everybody just was like, you know what? That left a bad taste in our mouths. Let's run it back. I mean, it'd be scary good. It would just create such a logjam, though. I think that would be the most difficult part would be trying to convince the younger guys of no, just one more year and then you'll get your turn. But Quinn Ewers coming back is definitely, if that's the case, and it looks like it leans that way, yeah, that's a massive leg up for Texas and just the arms race next year to know the type of player and the level of player that you have coming back. I mean, he definitely has left some meat on the bone. He nearly was the hero the other night. I mean, just the late game, the way he played, and certainly Washington gave them some space to move around and find their way back into that game. But at the same time, Quinn Ewers, I mean, there's no denying some of the throws that he makes. And just when he's on, he is as good as anybody out there in the country. And, wonder to what extent he was sort of dinged up the other night. When he got hit, he just seemed to sort of be out of it. There was questions about did he have a concussion or not. He got asked about it in the postgame. Of course, he wasn't going to admit it, even if he did in the postgame. But he just kind of brushed it off as they cleared him and he was okay. But, yeah, I mean, he's a really good player. I still think he's got a lot of room to grow. I think it's a smart decision for him in the long run, especially with the crowded quarterback class to come back, and that sets up Texas really, really well. All it means is just more clamoring for Arch from that crowd for another year. But Ewers, has to stay healthy as well, and I think that another year with Sark would do him some good.
He also hasn't been healthy. So, look, if you want to see Arch, there's a good shot you could see him for a couple games.
Yeah, we saw Malik Murphy start a couple games. So, yeah, odds are we'll probably see Arch there. So, I mean, he knows that even if Quinn Ewers is the starter again, that's just more time for him to mature. And he's probably still going to see the field in some form or fashion. Certainly, maybe in a couple of his earlier games, not necessarily the Michigan game they have on the schedule, which is really exciting leading into next season. But, I think that Texas is set up well regardless of the decisions that are made, but certainly there's some that could sway them in a big direction as far as beating the drums for next year, and Quinn Ewers is at the top of that list, and it does feel like just everything, the post-game, all of that, like he's going to be most likely coming back at this point. It'd be surprising if he didn't.
And he is not necessarily and look, he doesn't have to because they're so good, but in his 2 years as the starter, he's not necessarily won games with a Caleb Williams went out and won games for USC, just doing match in Oklahoma. He's done that. Quinn Ewers, the Texas team is so well balanced that there's not many games where you're like, well, this came down to just Quinn Ewers having a superhuman effort like Michael Penix did against him the other night. And I'm not knocking Quinn Ewers for that. That's more of a compliment to the Texas roster, but he still hasn't had a lot of those moments where it's like, holy cow.
I think that's what.
And he's on his way up. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And, he's still a younger guy. You'll hear that all the time with him. He's young for his age because he enrolled early in Columbus and then obviously made his way to Texas. We all know that story. But I think the shocking thing to me the other night was just how much better Washington's stars were than Texas's stars. Mm-hmm. Their stars shone a lot brighter than UT's stars did. And there were some opportunities, but Xavier Worthy clearly wasn't healthy. He got dinged up during practices or re-aggravated or whatever, but he was just a non-factor, basically.
He had the one big catch.
He did.
That was huge. But even then, on that catch, the other 12 games of the year, he probably scores on that one, and he didn't the other night.
Yeah, and that was the one big catch. And then, A.D. Mitchell had some moments, but I mean, in comparison to what you saw from Washington's skill guys, the type of some of the plays that they made, that was surprising to me. Just because I look at Texas, I'm just like, look at all that star power, and then that's just a compliment to Washington. It's not even a knock on Texas. It's just like, look at Washington's star power. Like, my God, at quarterback, the brightest star maybe in all of college football coming off of this weekend, certainly. And then that wide receiving core. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, tight end. Running back obviously was a controversial issue the other night, but Dylan Johnson ran really hard, man. I mean, given how banged up he clearly was. So, yeah, that was just impressive. I won't even use that really to compare negatively with UT because that's not my intention, but that's a school, and I think it's too where with Texas, I mean, who are we comparing them to most of the time? To Iowa State and to Oklahoma State and to Oklahoma, who's their closest peer in the conference. That's about to change in a major way in the SEC because now it's comparable to LSU and to Georgia and to Alabama and to Ole Miss and to a number of other schools on any given year, much less, still Oklahoma. But, yeah, that was just super impressive that Washington Stars came out and really shine bright the other night and a little bit brighter than Texas in the biggest game of the year for both of those programs. But, yeah, UT I think is set up really well for next season. A lot will depend on some of the decisions that are made, but I think even if all the guys who have an opportunity to go pro early do go pro, they're still going to be fine because they've recruited pretty well. But, yeah, the quarterback carousel, to not have to worry about that is a good feeling to have, and I don't think that they're really worried about it too much, like a Miami, like in Ohio State possibly, and like some of these other schools that are still out there that we've been talking about.